Hi there, my name is Jen, and thanks so much for joining me for day 24 of Inktoberfest. And today we are going to be using foil as a resist. So we're going to jump right in. And I have started out and I have the honeycomb stencil along with a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock, and I've got that taped down, and I am spreading the transfer gel duo with my craft knife. And so I'm just going to go ahead and spread that over the tag and get that gel through that stencil. And for this technique, you do not need a laminator. This is just going to be foil on a sticky surface. So if you don't have the transfer gel and you have something else that's going to remain slightly tacky, that will work with foil as well. So once I've done that, you can see that the gel is a white color, and once this has completely dried, it will be a clear color. So it takes about an hour or so to dry, and I went ahead and I took the Sunrise Lake transfer sheet or foil sheet, and I run it through my Big Shot because I think that gives the best adherence to the dried gel. And isn't that foil just so beautiful? I love this Sunrise Lake transfer sheet. And for this first technique, we're going to do a little bit of watercolor resist. And so I have watered down my watercolors, and I'm going to take a paintbrush and just basically go over the foiled areas with that watercolor. And you can take any medium and make it resist, whether that is an ink pad or a spray or alcohol inks. Anything can be a resist, because basically a resist is just the foil resisting whatever you're putting on top of it. So since foil is a non-porous surface, it's going to be easily wiped down after I have finished putting my watercolor on top of it. And therefore it is resisting the color or medium that I'm putting on top of it. It is not taking on the color that I'm putting on top of it, so it is resisting it. And once I have finished that, I did go ahead and take my heat tool and heat up and dry the watercolor. And then to remove any of that watercolor that was sitting on top of the foil, I am just using a microfiber cloth. And I love this foil. I can't tell you how much I love this foil. It is so beautiful. I just love it. And I'm going to use a similar foil for this next project. This is another one of the Maker Forte foils through Ephemera web, and this one is called Moonlit Lake. And so I'm taking a piece of pattern paper from Maker Forte called A Walk on the Wild Side, and I've kind of gone ahead and cut that down so it will fit on a tag. And I'm going to go ahead and take the foil and place the foil side up, the silver backing down onto my cardstock, and I'm going to run this through my Mink. And this is sped up, I think, like 7 times. The Mink, I have the mini Mink. It is fairly slow. So I went ahead and ran that through my Mink. You can use a laminator if you have that. And I'm going to peel back that foil, and it has basically welded itself to the toner from that paper. It is so beautiful. These foils are just so beautiful. Just on their own, they are so outstanding. So I'm going to do a little bit of ink resist, and so I am using some of the Maker Forte Color Hive inks. This one is Raw Skirt. So I'm going to take my blending tool and go over that with both the Raw Skirt, and then I add a little bit of Purple Rain there in the middle, and then towards the end of the tag or the piece of paper, I'm going to add back in that Raw Skirt again. And I'm basically going to do the same thing as I did with the first technique, and that is I'm taking my microfiber cloth and I'm just going to wipe off that ink from atop of that foil. And so basically this is a foil resist with ink. And I also use some of the ephemera from the Birthday Sentiment ephemera pack, and so I've gone ahead and foiled those just to make a snazzy little tag. And I am taking some ink and going over those ephemera pieces, so you can add the ink to the foiled ephemera pieces as well. And then Maker Forte and most of their packaging, they will have this backer that is just a solid black. That is toner ink, so you can take your leftover pieces of foil and run that through your laminator or your Mink and have that foil stick, because it is toner. So that is what I did with a little bit of extra pieces from the tag. And I'm just going to cut that up and I'll add it to my tag, even though it's not a resist technique. And for this next one, I'm going to go ahead and I've used the Cosmos stamp set, and I'm using some flake and Glitter Glue by Creative Expressions. And I'm taking a dauber, and my workspace wasn't big enough to fit that in the camera, but I have put a little bit of that glue on my craft mat, and I'm taking a finger dauber and dipping that into the glue. And I'm just going to dab that on top of my stamp. And so this glue, it dries fairly quickly. You can try whatever you have, whatever glues you have. If you have the Eileen's tack it over and over, that might work really well as well, because that stays tacky. So anything tacky, the foil will adhere to. So I made a mistake here by pushing the stamp down. I should have done that, because what it actually did was grab the paper, and I didn't want it to do that. So you just really need a light impression to put onto your paper. So I went ahead and did that, and then I'm using some gunmetal foil. And more than anything, I am just running my fingers across this to try and burnish it. I did try and use my bone folder, but it kind of moves the foil too much. And so it has a really light impression. I think it's a beautiful effect. Foiling is perfect for things like digital images. They are so easy if you are printing out on a toner printer to add foil to digital images. But this is a way that you can add some foil to a stamped image. And so this resist is basically just a watercolor resist. I am using some of the Raw Skirt. And I've taken a paintbrush and dipped that in water, and I'm basically watercoloring with that. So it's kind of the same as heat embossing a stamped image and having kind of that well, and the foil acts as a sort of a well, not exactly the same, but it keeps that color where it needs to be. And so I went ahead and I colored that up with a few different colors and did a little bit of splatter on that tag. The effect is really subtle, but it's a really fun technique and another way that you can add foil using stamps. And the last two are more foil techniques rather than resist techniques, but I was having so much fun I wanted to do a little experimentation. So for this one right here, I went ahead and I inked that up in some Distress Oxides in Twisted Citron, Seedless Preserves, and Ripe Persimmon. And oxides stay wet for a while, and so I went ahead and I made sure to really douse that tag with my anti-static bag. And I'm using this Happy Halloween stamp. It's called Watercolor Witch, and I'm going to take some VersaFine Black, and I stamped this up a few times because it's a solid image. Sometimes it needs a few stamps to get it inked up. And then I'm going to take some clear embossing powder, and I heat this once, and so I want to go ahead and get that embossing powder melted, and then I'll clean up and I'll get my foil out. And this is actually deco foil in Opal, and I've got my piece cut and to make sure that will fit over my images. And then I'm going to take my heat tool and heat it again, and I'm doing this because I need that embossing powder to be hot so that the foil will adhere to it. And I have to work kind of quickly because that dries fairly quickly, the embossing powder. And I did run this through my Big Shot machine to get the foil to adhere. And I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but it did actually turn out pretty well. You can see the shiny places where that foil adhered to the embossing powder. I would recommend, if you have the sticky embossing powder, I have it somewhere, but I could not find it to save my life. So you can reheat that embossing powder and immediately put the foil on it, and it will stick to it. And so for the last one, I did a few more colors on a tag. These ones are Salvage Patina, Peacock Feathers, and Cracked Pistachio. And I used a little bit of the Resist spray, and that is kind of sticky spray. So I went ahead and I sprayed that once, and then I heated up to get it completely dry, and then I add a little bit of Salty Ocean Oxide spray, and then I go ahead and spray the Resist spray again. And then I'm going to take my heat tool and just heat it so that it is not totally wet but not totally dry, so it's still a little bit tacky, because I'm then going to take a piece of blue foil and place that over the tag, and I will again run this through my Big Shot machine. I found that's the best way to kind of burnish the foil onto the project, and it puts enough pressure on it that it works really super well. And so I'm going to peel back that foil, and it's sticking to those areas where that Resist spray was still wet. So I think it turned out pretty. There's so many options, combinations of things that you can do. But that is it for my video and my Inktoberfest month. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something new. If you did, please give a thumbs up. Also, don't forget to check out the Maker Forte Instagram page all month long for lots of giveaways. And so I'm going to add these little tags to my clip, and hopefully one of these days I will get the rest of the techniques added to that. But I hope you had fun and have fun for the rest of the month. Thank you so much again for stopping by, and I hope to see you soon.